All right. Last session of the day. I want to bring up a very special guest. I'm kind of embarrassed. I didn't wear anything cool today. But Stani, come on down and show us what a real fashion. Hey, let's go. I had to put my hair down. GM indeed. All right, first of all, we got to do a fashion talk. Tell me, where did you get that? Who made this? What's the story behind that cool outfit?
I got it from Morocco. Okay. It was a small, some sort of place where there's a lot of people using fabrics. They were smoking hashish and making clothes. So it looked very cool, so we bought it.
Appropriately colored green. I'm going to have to rent the runway on that with you afterwards. That's cool. So, first of all, thank you for coming. And thank you for the Aave team coming down and hanging out with us today. Or I should probably say the Avara team, right? Not that many people... I've gotten a chance to hang out with you and spend some time with the family. You got a 6 month bear, 6 months old?
8 months, yeah.
8 months, okay. Wow, that flies fast. Okay.
I'm into 9 actually, so time flies really, really quickly.
If you think crypto is fast, baby years are even faster. So
yeah, and if you have, if you're in crypto and you have kids, like you're in trouble. Like it's hard. It's really hard. But yeah, it's fun.
Neil and I are struggling. We're struggling. But the interesting thing is, not that many people know maybe the deep story behind Aave and how you started off on the Ethereum ecosystem, rebranded to Aave, and which means ghost in Finnish. I had a chance to hear a little bit of that story, but maybe we could share that with the audience just to kind of kick things off.
Yeah, it's need to refresh my memory. It's been like 8 years in DeFi now. And first of all, thanks for putting this event together and the whole Aptos team and inviting me and our team here. It's really amazing to see that there's exciting community here and a lot of builders as well. What I've been chatting with people. My story started roughly 2016 when I actually started to get excited about an exchange, a decentralized exchange called EtherDelta. And it was just a way to place orders on Ethereum in a way that you don't have any middlemen and you can trade and swap value. And this was super appealing because obviously back in those times, centralized exchanges were very unreliable at that point. So I was very excited about this idea of you can build programmable applications on the blockchain and also they live forever. So for me, it was really exciting that you can just create something that is really useful, and people could use it even years after, and it becomes kind of like a public good or infrastructure that anyone can use. And at that time, obviously, it was right after the DAO hack. So I don't know how many of you DeFi degens are familiar with that event, but basically there was a big hack, which probably today's numbers is very small, but really shook the Ethereum community and I came after that one, so I didn't have that hangover of feeling of what's happening at the moment in the space. But in 2016, 2017, I started to get excited about this idea of, what if you could actually earn yield on the blockchain and use your cryptographic portfolio and unlock liquidity and finance any type of a goal. And that was just the idea of the functionality, but the bigger vision was that, this technology could actually democratize finance. And in my early 20s, obviously I'm in my 30s now, but in my early 20s, I was building fintech applications, and one of the main issues there was that, if you create something, you have to build regionally, so you have to apply regional compliances, and you can't really build anything worldwide that really empowers everyone. And that's really sucked because if you build a really nice game today, and you get it on App Store or Google Play, everyone can pretty much use it if you just publish it everywhere, right? But finance didn't work that way. So for me, that was really appealing. You have this kind of like a borderless economy. And I started with a project called ETHLand, which was like a predecessor of Aave. And Aave protocol then evolved from there. How much of the story you want to know? It's like very long.
Well, I mean, I could sit here and just listen all day, honestly. But I think it's crazy to hear that it was almost 8 years ago, right? And fast forward to where you are today, going from ETHLand to Aave to having an amazing suite of products to what has now become Avara is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think people here are building in a very nascent ecosystem. Some of the faces and the people that I've gotten to know over the last year and a half, it makes me think about how long you've been building in the space. And now today, Aave is the largest DeFi lending protocol in the market. Yeah. $10 billion of TVL. I mean, that is, congratulations on that. Right? That's
yeah.
And you're humble, so I'll say it for you. I'll brag for you. I'm from New York. I can say whatever I want.
It's still small. Yeah, it's still very small. Like how small DeFi is, but it's very significant for us who are building this space because we started building experimentation. So I would never imagine that DeFi will have 100 billion at some point, and like these were like kind of like small. Applications and I think that the fact that it's interoperable and you can move funds around, it's a really just like a better way of doing financial transactions. So I was really surprised of how along we came.
Yeah. Well, I want to. You mentioned an interesting point around security, and we'll get to that at some point. But you were building when there was no other place to build other than Ethereum initially, right? And so the landscape has evolved so much over the last almost 10 years now. How are you looking at the Ethereum ecosystem? What are some of the things that you're excited about, and what are you looking at outside of that world as well?
Well, the first thing that got me really much excited about Ethereum is that the idea of that borderless economy, and that you could just build for the people globally, and that was like really appealing because I personally believe that. Being able to build democratic software in a way that it really touches everyone is really something in deep down my heart that I want to do, and I've been dedicating time, and blockchain really helps to do that, especially for finance and financial infrastructure. And I mean, like for us building on Ethereum early on, the tooling wasn't really, it was very nascent. So building today on Ethereum. Or any of the environments is much more easier than it used to be in the before. But for me, it has been always about inclusivity. For example, the way we build the Aave protocol, we're currently in 12 different networks at the moment, all EVM networks, and EVM is kind of been, I think, the main product of Ethereum because you can. When you have an EVM, you can actually transport into these other networks, and mostly I think for Ethereum the scaling is L2s. So we've been always approaching this building from like an inclusive angle, and I think the reason Aave has been so successful as a protocol has been because the community has been listing different kinds of assets into the protocol, and every asset listing is actually empowerment of a community, and every new network is an empowerment of a community. So I do think like this is the kind of a way we've always thought about Ethereum. It was the only place to build. There was some other options there, but that's where most of the kind of like a liquidity was there. And there's the other side of Ethereum where where people say like you have to just build on Ethereum, and obviously like that is. Really kind of like for me hard to accept because I think technology should go where the users are and also innovation. So different networks have their different kinds of capabilities and features that bring users. And where there are users, there most likely is going to be a financial layer. And if there is a financial layer, Aave needs to be there. So it's more of a question of where Aave could go, where there's users and serve those users. And I think that is the kind of a way to think about building.
I couldn't agree more. And I think our team spends a lot of time thinking about how you make sure that technology is leading and innovation is leading in a way that consumers ultimately end up benefiting. And so DeFi has definitely pushed the boundaries of that. Let's go back to that point of security, right? And so you talked about the challenges in the Ethereum world. How are you thinking about Ethereum and security? How are you thinking about it in other ecosystems? And maybe some thoughts for a lot of these early DeFi developers here as they start their journeys.
Yeah, I mean, it's security is a tough one because I think there's a lot of people here also in this room that have interesting ideas that you want to build, and you want to ship in on Aptos, and you're thinking about the security aspect as well. And obviously, like the stakes are going high and growing in DeFi, so there's more capital, more users. So you have to build something that is really secure, especially if you're building for the public. And the way you think about security is that it's a cultural thing. So if you're building DeFi from the perspective that you want to build high quality software and you want really minimize failures in the software, you will have to have a good culture for that and a mindset. And I think besides the culture, you also have to have a good processes in place and also a network around you to achieve this. And I think Aave has been very lucky, and our team has been very lucky that we've had talented engineers since pretty much the beginning, and also people around us that are sharing the same culture, and also the Aave community as well. So we are putting a lot of effort in different kinds of audit and formal verifications, and really adding processes where we can produce high quality code, and still DeFi. Even the amount of resources you put, you never know what can happen, right? And the way I think about it is that it's a big experimentation, and everyone who is here early on building it, definitely, you have to just think about security in a way that you're putting all the efforts that you can, and that's your main kind of like a driver. But at the same time, it's code made by people, right? What I do like about, for example, the Aptos ecosystem and the stack is that there is some different kinds of choices in the stack which helps developers quite a lot. So usually when we are producing code, we use also formal verification. We work with Certora. It's a great company that runs their own verifier. It's not open source, but they really provide a lot of value. And Aptos has its own verifier on the network, which is actually open source. Which actually is really helpful for DeFi builders because you can write different kinds of formal verification rules, and those can be reused across the different DeFi projects. So not only you can actually write these rules for yourself, but you can actually share with other projects and create a nice library of formal verification rules. So that's something that's really cool actually, and trying to secure the ecosystem together. But yeah, we've seen DeFi now for years. Like there's been a lot of big hacks at the same time. So it just showcases when you have an open an environment, you can anyone can build. So building a good DeFi brand as well, requires a lot of emphasis on security, and that's a big part of success.
I mean, I love that, right? That you're basically saying security is part of the brand, and it's part of the culture. And that's so important in this world where billions of dollars are at play, and providing end users some comfort that you're taking the right precautions. The challenge or the trade-off often of that is speed, right? And so how do you balance that where you're trying to push the boundaries of innovation and move as fast as this market does?
Yeah, it's really tricky, right? Because timing is everything as well. But the more kind of the more I am kind of like growing as a founder and a builder, I think kind of like a time is also a little less relevant in the sense that we all know that this technology is here for the long term, and I think that you can really build something interesting in DeFi, even if something that you have in mind already exists, but you have a improved model in mind. Even 2 or 3 years from now. So I don't think that time is such a let's just say that time is overestimated and it's overrated, because if you build something really high quality, that will attract a lot of traction. And that's part of the branding as well. And security needs time. So I do think that's really valuable. And then the second really important thing is the community. So you have to build a community around your product. And it's really hard to build anything by yourself without that community, because the community can be a really good voice on actually guiding you to build a better product and a protocol. But also it could be a really good voice of actually managing that risk, whether it's like smart contract risk or, I don't know, for example, other types of risks. For example, in the Aave DAO, I mean, recently, if you follow enough social media, whether it's on Twitter or Lens, you might see, for example, Maker depositing quite a lot of liquidity recently with DAI against Ethena project. So Aave community has been taking measures to basically reduce some of these risk parameters that created a lot of drama recently on social media. But that's just an interesting example where, as a community, you have to take measures that are best for your community, and that's what makes DeFi exciting and also gives fundamentals, because you're not building only for the for the benefit of revenue, for example, but actually securing your architecture as well and the product. And that's why I think building community is a big part of it.
I love that. So maybe shifting a little bit into community, right? We've been spending a lot of time with our ecosystem team and really getting into the trenches, understanding where they want to be, how they want to, what tools they need. And as those come to market, we realize there's some interesting social components out there that might be worth exploring. You guys have something called Lens. How did you go from DeFi to Lens? And how are you thinking about the future of Lens for this audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, we've obviously, Aave and Avara now it's known for DeFi, but we also kind of understood that using blockchain, it has actually even more interesting use cases beyond finance. And finance has been quite a natural progression for using the blockchain. Obviously, Bitcoin was there to trying to solve peer-to-peer transfers, monetary transfers, and when Ethereum basically added a computer into the blockchain, you had programmable finance. But if you think about the idea of like what actually blockchain provides, it really provides guarantees of data integrity. So basically, in the world, we have financial data, and that's financial transactions and financial infrastructure, but we have even more social data. And we actually create a lot of this data ourselves. So we create online identities, we have online profiles, we make connections online, we create content. But a lot of that data at the moment is locked in these different social networking platforms, right? So what blockchain actually provides is a way of securing this data integrity in a way that actually these platforms aren't owning the data. And what it means is that it creates a censorship-resistant protection for the users, because they actually are not locked in a platform, and creates an open access for everyone to compute on data. So in short, you can use the blockchain in a way where you can create more fair and open social spaces. And why social spaces are important is that we have to come together, share ideas, get feedback, and also create ideas. And usually it happens obviously in real life, like in events like this, but moreover, it happens more and more online. And going from online to on-chain basically means that we ensure that these spaces are accessible for anyone. And that's basically what Lens is. And anyone can build a social application on top of Lens, create their algorithms, create better feeds and whatnot, and actually let the users to choose where they want to actually go from there.
I think it's been kind of an amazing product, and the philosophy behind it, anyone can create, is just phenomenal, and a very different and refreshing approach relative to everything else that's been out in market. So amazing to see sort of the opening of the garden. Actually, now that I think about it, the So explain a little bit more around the aesthetics, the design, and what the lens character is, and how you picked that. Because that's a story I got to know a little bit about.
I mean, I think like brands and characters are very important in our space because it's a nice way to actually reflect the ideas that we're building, right? So, and I think it's something about lenses that it's basically, I think social networks, they should like propagate like roots under the earth. So they shouldn't be like a one giant network, that everyone just follows and one giant feed. Our society, the world is becoming one big feed. We're consuming and doom scrolling this one giant feed all the time. What we actually hope is that Lens can be a kind of like a meta network, so networks of networks where applications can create their own networks, their own content modes, and users can create their own networks that they own, and these kind of like become, I would say, more smaller networks and more heterogeneous networks. So we're trying to kind of get away from a network design, a social network design of a monolithic model, where pretty much the world is going towards this direction, in my opinion. And that's because the social media platforms has grown so big, and the more time passes, the bigger they become, the more unstoppable they can become as well. So what I think is that we have to take the power back to the people, and that means effectively that by using blockchain, we can actually achieve this by creating identities and securing them on chain and making connections. And obviously, the next question is scalability. So obviously, with technology maturing quite a lot now within our space, we can actually have that scalability, and we can have transactioning for millions of users down the line. So I think it's just a question of time to solve global scale social networking where users own their identities and the networks they create. And then the last thing, obviously, is privacy that we want to figure out. So as we create this ownership for the users over their social identities, how do we enable privacy? And that's kind of like where, which is important for social networking.
Yeah, and for us, I think privacy is incredibly important. We've been thinking about it at the protocol level for quite some time. Things like veiled coins give that directly within the Aptos framework. And so, in order for some of these use cases to really come to scale, you need to be able to provide these features for not only the end user but the developer themselves, so they can take advantage of it. I saw an interesting thing the other day. I mean, you've been talking a lot about Move on Twitter.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think, I'm curious, and you clearly have been looking into things like Aptos. What are you seeing in Move? I think you're hiring a Move developer. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So we've. I think it's not a secret at this point. We've had basically a Move team for quite a while doing research, and I think something what is fascinating about Move as a technology, it feels like a kind of like it feels very early, but it feels like a better way of creating a financial infrastructural stack. And I think there's a very big emphasis on obviously, through Aptos, there's an interesting emphasis on scalability, but with Move, there's a lot of interesting emphasis also on security. So I personally think that Move is going to be the evolution of the blockchain-based programming languages. And so far, like what we've been researching has been quite fascinating. And the tooling is getting better as well. And the tools like the verifier that is on Aptos as well is really exciting tool, especially building DeFi applications. So I personally think that there's a really exciting opportunity for builders to come learn Move and build something really exciting. And I think it can actually increase the quality of the DeFi applications that we build today. But yeah, that's something that we're doing, and we're gonna definitely launch something interesting very soon.
a lot of Move developers in this room. So, if you want to pick their brains or if you want to talk to Stani. This has been a lot of fun. I also want to do a quick time check. How are we doing on time? Okay, I got the thumbs up. Okay, so if it's okay, I mean, can we open it up to the crowd? Because I get to hang out with you and ask all the questions I want, and I'll we'll do that at dinner again, maybe if we're lucky. But I'm sure the crowd would love to pick your brain. I'm also happy to answer any questions. But it's quite special to have Stani and the team here. So should we open it up? And are there a couple of questions in the crowd that want to ask Stani a tough one or an easy one? Start with an easy one, okay? Straight to the point. That's not an easy question. What's wrong with JC? What?
That was a really good question, but yeah. So basically, we've definitely are looking into Aptos and expansion there. So I think that's going to happen also. I mean, the typical answer is soon, but that's a really interesting use case, and I would love to a little bit of pick your brain as well about like what you're thinking about social networking and especially. Building towards audiences that are outside of our crypto space. I mean, we've been in the space for a couple of cycles, and we've seen the community grow quite a lot. So every year there's new people here, new builders, and what I think is going to be fascinating is that how we can use the existing technology and build towards users that necessarily don't need to feel the blockchain. So how do we can abstract a lot of this technology away? I don't think anyone goes to the internet like, hey, I'm going to go use the IP protocol and I'm going to go use the email protocol. But they just use all these applications. So I think that's an interesting path to think about when building these social networks. And super excited to get at some point Lens to Aptos as well and integrate.
Good question, JC. Who else? And JJ, come on up. Yeah. So the question is just there's an RWA view here that I think you guys have taken, and you've done some interesting experimentation with some heavy hitters. What's kind of what is the thinking there, especially going to the RWA going back to the RWA panel that we just had? How are you guys approaching that world? Yeah,
we had a couple of super exciting experimentations. So obviously one experimentation we had was together with JP Morgan on the what was the project name? Guardian. But it was really interesting because it was the first time when JPM actually did something on a public blockchain network and on a permissioned protocol. So
I can't believe you convinced JP Morgan to do that. That's amazing.
Well, it was Christina from our team, so she did all the heavy lifting with her team. But what was interesting there is that they used a permissioned version of Aave on a permissionless network, and I think that's very interesting way of to think about kind of like a private networks in a way where you already have public infrastructure. So like if you read a lot of stuff about DeFi, it's a lot about democratization, right? So like how do we get access to finance to everyone, democratic networks and I don't know, no fees and whatnot. So, but once you have that like a really good public-facing public infrastructure that is accessible to everyone, the next question is that what you can actually build in between as a value added. And that's why kind of like a permissioned market on a permissionless network was really exciting. And then we did the same with the Aave Arc project. So effectively similar setup, but the permissioned market was controlled by governed by the Aave DAO. And that was like a small iteration of the market on the Aave version 2. And obviously Aave version 2 is something that we, the permissionless and Arc that we want to deprecate to have a new market. More recent strategy has been to actually introduce real-world assets mainly on the facilitator side on Go stablecoin. So here's the thing, like I don't really have all the answers always because Aave as a protocol is governed by the Aave DAO. So I have my opinions and I try to also kind of like be very vocal about RWAs and where they come into play. But there is a bunch of other nerds in the Aave DAO thinking about these aspects, and they have also opinions where they should go. But I think that a really interesting way to think about it is through the Go stablecoin effectively. And RWAs has been very successful. I mean, stablecoins by themselves are like RWAs or off-chain assets, and BlackRock has been doing really interesting work in the space. So that's something that we're monitoring very closely, and definitely going to be a big part of what we're doing. But also, like, I think when it comes to RWAs, there's a lot of work still to be done regarding the not just the transparency aspect, but the accountability aspect. So how do we actually how can we audit off-chain assets the same way we can actually audit transactions on chain? And I think that piece of thing is a little bit missing because now we just trust a lot of these centralized issuers that based on quarterly reports or any type of reports. And the exciting part about blockchain is that you can actually audit the blockchain every single block, and how we can actually get a better auditing in these off-chain assets as well. And I think that's something where I would like to see more progress as well. And I think Chainlink is doing some work there with proof of reserves as well, which is very helpful.
That's just an amazing initiative that you guys kicked off. So congrats on that, and I'm excited to see a lot more take place this year too. And it seems like there's a lot of momentum to help facilitate that.
Maybe we should launch a real-world asset on Aptos, like a big one.
All right. Okay. Ooh, a lot of pressure from Stani right now.
we can tokenize my vinyl collection. How about that?
See, like he dresses better than me on my show, and then he's applying pressure on me on my show. I like this.
We should have a talk show. I think it could be good.
I think so. That would be a lot of fun. One more question, and then I'm getting a look from Malik. So maybe one more question. Okay. Zach, go for it. Okay, two more questions. We'll do two more questions. Okay.
How has like the institutional interest been, or I guess their perspective on DAO governance, given like BlackRock or Chase? Like, I don't know how much they would want to trust the Aave DAO, I guess, like in the long term.
Everyone trusts the Aave DAO.
I mean,
Come
I
on,
do,
Zach.
personally.
Very good question. I think institutions, they don't want to deal with DAOs. But I don't blame them because it's really, it's kind of like a new world for them as well, and then you come from a, traditional financial perspective. I mean, I can imagine it, like, imagine being in a fund or, in a bank, an investment bank, and explaining to your, manager people there that, we're going to go to this forum online and we're going to write a post and we're going to argue with a bunch of people we don't know. And then we're trying to ask, this sort of whatever they're asking for, and there's no legal entity as a counterparty. It's really like it's really like a long ask. There has been good initiatives, like there's been institutions going into the DAO and actually making proposals, and that's been like amazing to see, definitely. But it's not really they don't really like it. But I definitely appreciate everyone who are doing that work for them. I think there's a little kind of like a opportunity for being kind of like some sort of like a DAO service provider that really helps these institutions to represent them in these DAOs, and maybe that kind of like avoids to go through all these processes, because one big problem I see in DeFi governance is that a lot of the DAO frameworks differentiate amongst others. So for example, the governance framework in Aave is a little bit different than governance framework, for example, in Maker and other protocols. And obviously, we build a lot of infrastructure ourselves. So we have a Aave Governance v3, which is cross-chain governance. So it has different kinds of requirements than for example, many of these non-cross-chain protocols. So it's a little bit of a learning curve also to understand the processes that come into play. But also, if you approach from an angle that, you see that all these folks that are in these communities, they have an opinion and they can express it, but that doesn't really mean that your idea couldn't get traction in the DAOs. So it's a little bit of work, and I do think that I would like to see more institutions just, aping into the governance forum and just trying to get things done, and not really getting upset if it doesn't work for the first time or second time or the 8th time or the 10th time, and just like trying to push these initiatives, because there is definitely like a big arbitrage now between financial offerings in traditional finance and also the yield economy in on-chain at the moment.
And this is it's a really good question because, and an excellent point, because, and looking at it from the outside in, you guys have built an amazing community that has become so resilient over time, that understands the journey that you're on, aligns with sort of the principles of that you've put forward, and it's something that we should all aspire to look to when it comes to these sort of challenging moments where it's like the 10th time putting something up to vote and crossing your fingers and making sure not only is there alignment, of course, but the implementation and things go into production smoothly, right? So that's amazing. Hats off to that.
Yeah, and there's always characters in DAOs, but I think everyone has just like I would say in overall, like the DAO culture is net positive. So people are just, they have their own concerns and they really care about what we're building. Eventually this is going to be an infrastructure that is going to service everyone. If DeFi is successful, I don't see that any other financial system is needed, because we can just build it on the blockchain with DeFi. And I do really want that if you have this kind of like a global financial infrastructure, it should be accessible and everyone can actually go and give their opinion. A lot of the interest rates today in traditional finance, they some of them are dictated by markets, but some of them are also dictated, most of the central bank interest rate, by a few people in a closet doors, based on their own assessments and whatnot. So there's definitely some accountability there, but very little participation. And I think the best financial system is where anyone can democratically contribute there. So I do think that long term, it's important that there is this accessibility and people care about what we build and they fight for it as well. And that, DAOs are the best place to fight, I guess.
Have you tried X or Twitter? That's another place.
Yeah, that too.
We have one more question. So.
It's going to be a super simple, quick one. My name is Patricia, and thank you guys for the amazing panel. Super excited about Aptos and also Aave. I'm not sure if you guys know much about the upcoming DeFi Night in Dubai next month, but I thought last year and I won, and would love to know if you guys would like to sponsor my flight in September, and there will be the biggest Aptos shillers and Aave shillers, or maybe Aave's RWA shillers on Aptos.
Can it be live streamed on Lens?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
Sponsorship for you guys.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think we can do that.
I'm down for sure.
All right. No
who
more.
are you fighting against?
There's a girl.
Solana or are there like fighters or like?
Tom's head of ecosystem is fighting me, so.
Ooh. Okay. Just bring them back, dragged by the collar. That's really cool, and yeah, that's amazing that you're going to be doing that. It sounds like we kind of have to. Right?
Yeah. I'm down.
Yeah,
I'm down for
okay,
sure.
we're down. All right. We'll take that one offline. No more requests as questions, though.
No more sponsorships.
All right, one more.
I wonder what's the kind of the meaning of the new names and why
Ooh.
people do the rebranding.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So yeah, the question is why the rebranding and what is the meaning behind the name, and maybe a little bit of what's the meaning behind the brand too.
Yeah, I mean, we've with Aave, obviously we started with one product, and Aave means ghost in Finnish. So basically, well, the thing you have a ghost as a mascot is really cool and fun. It's very friendly. So when I was building, when I was building fintech applications, like everything was always so serious because you wanted to show that you're serious, and you want to attract customers and whatnot. But like, I think with DeFi, you don't really need to have that seriousness because like you really are building technology where you don't have to trust people. Like that, the whole point of DeFi is to remove that like middleman component. So that's kind of like one story I tell about the Aave name itself, which is, and with the Avara, so. Today we have multiple products. So obviously we want to build technology that is empowering people. We want to build an internet that is benefiting everyone and rebalancing from big corporations to also giving more fair environments, whether it's finance or social networks, to people. And the way we think about it is that it's going to be a long vision, right? So Aave, we've been building for a few years now. Lens is going to be a long vision as well. And also we recently acquired Family, a really well-designed wallet that is still on test flight, but if you want to try beta.family, and it's going to launch quite soon. So we basically build a lot of this infrastructure and are still continuing building, but we also want to build businesses and products. And that's what Avara is. So what we're saying is that the future isn't just purely everything's going to be decentralized and a commodity. The future will be that we can actually build on a fair playground. Everyone means that if you want to build a business, company, a product on that is, let's say, social media product, you can do that on a decentralized network. If you want to build a financial product, you can do that as well on a decentralized network in a more like a fair environment. So what we want to actually do is that we want to build a lot of this infrastructure together with everyone else building. Aptos is building a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of people in DeFi are building, and then we want to build those products as well. And Avara is about end-to-end products. So basically we build all the way to the smart contracts, to the other side of the spectrum, all the way to the user experience. And this is important because the way I've seen now so far the whole space evolve is that we're kind of in a moment where we don't have that personal computer feeling in our space. We're in a place where we're like pre-PC, pre-Apple. And the next kind of phase is that we're building more of that personal computer type of interface for the blockchain. And what I mean by that is that it's really hard if you go and explain to your friends, how to buy a specific asset or how to use some of these DeFi protocols or some of these DeFi strategies, they will look at you like, what the fuck you're talking about, right? So it's really hard to explain to people because it's also very hard to use. But with account abstraction, embedded wallets, and a lot of this infrastructure being built, we're going to transfer towards, move towards a phase where we're building more towards consumer. So it's not anymore kind of like a place to build complex applications, but actually a lot of this stuff is going to be built directly to the consumers. And Avara is part of that vision as well. And I think everyone else is part of that vision. And our goal is just to accelerate that vision as soon as possible as well. So that's the main thing about Avara, I would say, like in terms of the branding.
It's a great question, and thank you for sharing the depths of how you've been thinking about that vision.
What's Aptos' vision? I want to hear it now.
Okay, I mean, it's a pretty simple one, and maybe kind of just reminding everyone, right? For Aptos, we were thinking about how do you look at similarly the way the internet is designed today, and how do you bring it back to the people in a way that it is fairly accessible? The walled gardens are sort of opened up again, and you go back to innovating in a way you're unencumbered. And so, everything from thinking about the name, and Avery and I have a funny story. We were struggling with thinking. we had no agency. We sat by the fire one night and just thought through all these different sort of concepts. Came to the point of looking at, of course, famous California shorelines, and Aptos was one of those. And what was more interesting to us about Aptos was it didn't seem like something that was so out there and distant when we looked into the meaning of it, but it meant, it was a Native American term that meant the people, or the convergence of two rivers. And so both of those meanings meant something really deep to us. Right, the fact that we're trying to build something that isn't so distant, but instead is grounded, which is, kind of how why I like Lens a lot too. It makes it feel so real. It's all about the people. It's about individuals that can use this technology and not think about, to your point, the protocol that they have in their hands, but instead the products that are adding value in their lives. And so when we think about Aptos as a maybe sometimes just infrastructure, it's infrastructure that feeds society. And it's so often in society we forget about the most important infrastructure, right? Whether that be water that comes out of your faucet, to telco that seamlessly make the internet available in the palm of your hands. And why don't we have a much more freer version of the internet? And so Aptos was designed from its earliest days to inside in the walls of Facebook to make money movement free. And today, we're incredibly inspired of pushing that beyond just things like money. Obviously, DeFi is a big theme for us, but there's so much more that you can do. And as you all are sitting in this room, challenging the perception of the world's where companies have amalgamated all this strength, things will change, and they're changing today, right? You're seeing companies that are like you guys building for 7 years. Changed the world of finance so much so that JP Morgan is getting FOMO and trying to jump on the bandwagon of a ghost, right? And so that is incredibly powerful. And so, I hope all of you all, feel not only inspired by the vision of something like Aptos, but also Avara and what you guys are doing. And so, I'm incredibly excited to share this vision together with you and also together with everyone in this room. And so that's kind of our vision.
And that's really helpful. I do appreciate the kind of like the people aspect, because, like, for example, like if I will build something as a DeFi builder on Aptos, there is this kind of like a component of micropayments and being able to transact more often than the existing financial system can actually settle in a very small amounts. And I think this is really valuable because we do financial transactions when we have like big purchases, but we don't really exchange value on a more like a smaller value exchange events. So I think that's really cool. And I mean, water, it's something that everyone needs to drink. So I mean, this is a whole point about not just kind of like what we're doing in Aptos. I think being able to build democratized technology, it really touches everyone. So in some ways, it feels that we're a small community here, and the crypto community in general is really small. But eventually, this technology will touch upon every single person in the planet, hopefully. That's the vision.
Totally. And just to maybe kind of add to that, right? Like, we have an amazing group of people within our team and within our community that take these principles and these values incredibly seriously too, right? And so everything, going back to safety and security, that's right there available in Aptos, right? And so we've learned from a lot of these ecosystems in the past and the challenges that they faced. I saw a few people nodding their heads when we were talking about that hack, and that costs us money. It costs us reputation. And so, from Aptos' perspective, we're evolving incredibly fast to make sure that we can have infrastructure that we're incredibly proud of collectively, right? Not just the two of us here, but all of us to move these folks forward. And so that's important. And if you dial things back a little bit, right? If you want real world assets to come on chain, you can't be in an environment where protocol goes down or still says it's in beta, right? You have to be very serious when you show up to a conversation with JP Morgan, right? Aave can't be in beta when you guys talk about SLAs, right? And so this is, this is the, I think, level of seriousness that we take at Aptos. How do you operate at those enterprise grade standards, but really continue to open the playing field and be incredibly disruptive? And so it's not easy to do that. And so, hats off to you for building for, 8 years in this, and hats off to all of you all, really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And I think now it's actually a really cool time to build DeFi because like a lot of the main infrastructure is there, but the more kind of like a exciting consumer-facing DeFi is still not here. So for example, the micropayments is one example, but the way I used to think about it is that like kind of like the front end of the DeFi is still yet to be built, and Aptos is a really interesting actually solutions to build some of these things. So if you're a builder, like that's definitely an area that is super fascinating at the moment.
I mean, micropayments is an interesting one, and I mean, I don't know if Pranav is in the room here, somewhere maybe in the back. I don't know, maybe not. But one of the things that we talked about is just like how business models had to conform to the limitations of technology, right? And you still see like I kind of get upset when I have to subscribe to like the New York Times, and I only read a few articles. Right, and it's kind of unfair also to the authors of those few articles. Why don't they get more of the payments from the content that's being consumed at the rate it's being consumed? And if you think about the world that we can now introduce to people, is you can pay for consumption through credits, through money, through micropayments, instead of having to subscribe to a subscribership model. And this is a perfect actual example of how the world's entire economy and these business models can change with this new technology. And so that's a great one to talk about at some point.
Yeah, and also incentives play a big role. So we're all used to incentive models where there's always some sort of cost of user acquisition. But what Web3 does really good job is that it actually pays that user acquisition cost directly to the users. Whether it's like liquidity mining in DeFi or other types of incentives or retroactive incentives. So it's really a fascinating kind of like a way of acquiring users and making it very transparent by using the blockchain. So yeah, I'm very bullish on the future of DeFi.
Cool. I'm getting told by Neil that we have to cut this awesome conversation, but although we can probably sit here all day. Thank you, Stani, for coming. I really appreciate you. So let's give a round of applause to Stani and the team.
Thanks for having me here.
Yep. With that, hope you all are having had a great first day here. Go grab a drink, hang out with each other. If you want to come find us, we'll be around. Thank you all.